Okay, so this is the second part of the lesson on inverse matrices. You should be watching this video only if you have on your mode for your calculator this little word here next at the bottom of the screen for mode. Okay, if you don't see that on your calculator after pushing the mode button, you should be watching the other part 2 video lesson. Number 4 here is exactly like number 3 in your notes, and I did this just so that you could see how we do this now with a calculator and how much easier it is. So what we really want is to take the inverse of this first matrix like we did before and multiply it in the front of both sides. So x will equal 0, -3, 2, 4. So it's taking the matrix over there, and we're going to do this little -1 symbol, which is going to stand for the inverse. Don't get this confused with, for those of you who remember your exponent rules, x to the -1 is the same thing as 1 over x. That's true with our exponent rules, but that is not what we're doing here. Don't think of that as the same as this. This stands for the inverse. And we're going to multiply that by -18. Let's do that again. -18 over 32. Okay, and we're going to use a calculator to do this whole thing. So here's how this works. Pull up your calculator, and we're going to plug in. Okay, if you're on one of these screens, just hit second, quit, and that'll get you back to the main screen. All right, so if you have the nice math print for your calculator, what you can do is hit this alpha button, and then to bring up the matrices, you click the middle button on top, F3. So alpha F3 will bring up matrices. And you can see here if I had done alpha F1, you'd have fractions, function, matrices, and the y variables, which at other times we'll use some of these things. But for now, we're just doing matrices. So the first matrix that I'm multiplying is a 2 by 2 matrix. So I make sure that 2 by 2 is highlighted. Just make sure you've hit enter for both of them, and then come down and click OK. 2 by 2, enter, OK. So now I have a 2 by 2 matrix. So my first element is a 0. I scroll to the right. And my next element is a -3. Make sure you hit negative, not -3. So -3. I'm going to scroll to my right after I'm done entering it. A 2, scroll to the right. And a 4, scroll to the right. And that gets me out of the matrix. Now at this point, I've entered that matrix in, and I'm going to say that it's the inverse of this. The inverse button is this button right here, x to the -1, right there. So if we go ahead and click that button, and that will give us the inverse matrix. Now I could just hit enter here and find out what it is, but it's not necessary. Let's now multiply. So I'm going to say times, and now a new matrix, -1832. So I'm going to again hit alpha F3, and this is now a 2 rows by 1 column, so I need to change it to a 1 column. Scroll down, click OK, and now I have my correct dimensions. I can type in a -18, scroll down, 32, and at this point everything's entered in. I can just hit enter, or if you want, you could scroll out of it. But now if you hit enter, there's the answer, 4, 6. So we come back over here, and our answer is that matrix X is equal to 4, 6 matrix. So if we had a 4 and a 6 right there and multiplied it with this matrix, you'd get -1832. That's the answer. See, with our calculators, makes this nice and easy. So why don't you try number 5 on your own? Pause the video. Just be careful that you think that this is the one that you're solving for. So this is your matrix A this time. And you should have had for your answer that z is equal to 2, 0, -5, and 1. All right, so here's how you do this. I'm going to write it out first, and this is how you show your steps on this. We're going to take the inverse of this matrix that's in front of the variable and multiply it in the front on both sides. So we will have -4, -3, 2, and -1. That's our first matrix. It's supposed to be a negative there. Sorry for my sloppiness. And we're going to take the inverse of that and multiply by 7, -3, 9, -1. And that will equal our z matrix. And now we can go straight to the answer, whatever that answer is. And that's going to equal z. How do I get that? I jump on my calculator, and we're going to say alpha F3. We're going to do a
2 by 2 matrix. So hit enter, scroll down, hit enter, -4, scroll over, negative 3, scroll over, 2, scroll over, negative 1.
There's my first matrix, and I'm supposed to take the inverse. So again, I hold down this x to the negative 1. That means the inverse button. And now I multiply it by times by alpha f3. And it's a 2 by 2, so I can come down here and click OK. And just so you know, you actually don't even need to put this little multiplication sign, because it knows if you put two matrices next to each other that is multiplication.
Keep entering in these numbers. 7, negative 3, scroll to the right, 9, scroll to the right, negative 1, and that's everything, so let's just enter. And there we go, 2, 0, negative 5, 1.
2, 0, 2, 0, negative 5, and 1. And that's the answer to solving this matrix equation. All right, last part of our notes. We're going to now solve some systems of equations, and I bet some of you are going to wish you had known how to do this back in Unit 3. So this is actually kind of nice here with matrices. It makes this very simple. The way to do this is that we first have to recognize a couple of things. This first matrix is going to be what we call our coefficient matrix. Coefficient. It's going to be a matrix full of coefficients. Hence the word coefficient matrix. Matrix. Here we go. All right, now this matrix here, the x, that's going to be called our variable matrix. And what do you think is inside the variable matrix? Very good. Variables. Variable matrix. Man, my handwriting is horrible. Okay, and oops, that's an I. Variable. And then this last one, this C, is going to be a bunch of numbers, but they're not coefficients. This one was a coefficient. This is going to be what we call our constant matrix. I ran out of room. Constant matrix. So we have matrix. So we have our coefficients, our variables, and then our constants. That's how we set these things up. That makes no sense yet. Don't worry, it will. I'll come back to this. So here's an example. We have this big system. 3 variables, 3 equations. Now, we could have been mean to you in the last unit and made you solve all of these things with substitution or elimination, but then it is just crazy difficult. But with matrices, very simple. The first thing you check is to make sure that your letters are alphabetical. If we just put them in alphabetical, that's standard form. And then making sure that we have an equal sign and that all of our constants are on the right. Now, once you have that, the way you set this up is you take all of the coefficients first. So we have all of the coefficients. We're going to then multiply it by our variables, and we're going to then say that it equals our constant matrix. Coefficients, variables, constants. So what are the coefficients of our first row here? The coefficients are a 1, a negative 5, and a negative 4. The next row, RST. So it's 1 for R, 4 for S, and since there's no t, we put a 0. And then here, the R coefficient is a 3, the S coefficient is a 1, and the t coefficient is a 4. Here's our variables. So what are our variables? R, S, and t. And if you think about your matrix multiplication, this would make sense because you're supposed to take, I'll get rid of this in a second here, but if you multiply these, you would take a row and then you multiply by a column. That's from our last lesson. So that row matches up with that column, and that would give us our R minus 5S minus 4T. So it works out perfectly. And then what does that equal? It should equal a 5. So there's our constant, and then a negative 3, and then a negative 17. So what you do now is you will take your calculator and you do it just like what we've been doing before. You take this matrix, you take its inverse and multiply it in front of your constant matrix. And so you will have your R, S, and T will then equal this inverse times this one. So let's grab our calculator and do that.
So let's see here, clear, let's get all this stuff. So alpha, F3, and we have, let's see here, this is a 3 by 3, so let's scroll over here, make it a 3 by 3, and then here click OK. And we get 1, scroll over, negative 5, scroll over, negative 4, scroll over, 1, scroll over 4. This is kind of tedious. Zeros are zeros, so I can just kind of keep going. Then a 3, and a 1, and a 4. And then we're going to multiply that by, I don't know this, alpha F3. You know, I guess I could pause the video at this point because you don't have to watch me do all this, but unless you're just really bored and you want to see exactly how I do this. Enter, click, OK, 5, negative 3, and negative 17. The next example, I'll just pull this up and already be done for us.
All right, so, I forgot. So hopefully some of you caught that while I was doing this. I forgot to do the inverse. So I'm going to go right in between here, and I need to insert the inverse. So I need to insert this x to the negative 1. So I do a second, and then right here above delete it says insert, second insert, and now I hit the inverse button. That'll insert that inverse. So now I multiply these two things together, and I get negative 3, 0, negative 2. And that is the answer. Negative 3. R is negative 3. S is 0. And what did I say the other one was? Negative 2. And T is negative 2. And there is our solution. Sometimes you'll see on the answer key, you might see something written like this. Negative 3, comma, 0, comma, negative 2. Kind of like coordinate points. They'll list it like that. But it's the same thing. R, S, and T. Just make sure you've written them alphabetically so that you stay consistent. Okay, number 7. This one has got some interesting things that have problems with it. Most students tend to make some mistakes, and that is you need to have this all in standard form where you have it alphabetically and then you have your constants on the right. So this first equation we don't need to do anything with, so I'm just going to rewrite it. 4x minus 2z equals 20. We didn't need to change anything. On this one though, notice how the y is over here. We need to subtract it and put it in order, so we're going to have a negative 7y plus a z, and that equals negative 9. We have our constants on the right. And then this third example, so x minus 5y, notice what I'm doing. I'm subtracting the 5y over, bringing the 8z over, minus 8z equals a positive 15. All right, now that we have that, we can set up our matrices. So the first matrix is all the coefficients, x, y, and z. So x has a 4. The y of this first equation, there is no y, so I'm going to put a 0. And then the z was a negative 2. Second row, the x is not there. There is no x, so we put 0. The 7 is a negative 7. And then the z is a 1. And then down here below, the x was a 1. The y has a negative 5. And then the z had a negative 8. All right, we multiply it by x, y, z variable matrix. And that's going to equal our constant matrix of 20, negative 9, and 15. Okay, now what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to pull up the calculator that has this all plugged in already. Okay, so here I have these matrices. I've already plugged them into the calculator, so we didn't have to waste time you watching me click those numbers. And when we take the inverse of the first one and multiply it by the second one, we're going to get 4, 1, and negative 2. So what that does is, let's go back to here, and we get for our answers, we have that x, y, and z, that matrix, will equal 4, 1, and negative 2. And again, you might see it as a kind of like a coordinate point where you have 4, 1, comma, negative 2. It's possible to have 3 coordinate points if you're doing 3 dimensions, but this is how they would be written on your answer keys, but it's the same thing. All right, that is it for your lesson. We're going to end here with a nice little clip from the movie The Matrix. Try to end each lesson with one of these clips, and I hope you do well with this. Make sure you have your calculator handy for any of your future mastery checks, and good luck. See you in the next lesson.
Do not try and bend the spoon. That's impossible. Instead, only try to realize the truth.
What truth?
There is no spoon.
There is no spoon?
Then you'll see that it is not the spoon that bends. It is only yourself.
The oracle will see you now.